Yeah, so we're back on the podcast here with a couple guests here. I got Zach Louis, good friend of mine. He was on the social media podcast. Good to have you,
Yeah.
Zach.
Thanks for having me back. Happy
Yeah,
to be here.
for sure. And we also got a new friend, Justin.
What's going on, guys?
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
So, big topic today. A lot to get into. Health and wellness is the topic. For me, and we'll get into why each of us think that's such an important topic. But I mean, for me, it's pretty obvious. Health and wellness. You're gonna feel better if you're focusing on health and wellness. You're gonna be more effective, more productive, and I think there's more importance to health and wellness besides the effects it has on the individual. On society at large, if each person's a little bit healthier, they're gonna have more to offer to the rest of society. They're gonna bring their best selves, and that's what I really find for myself. The healthier I'm feeling, the more likely I'm going to be compassionate and friendly and bring a better self. So you guys see that as well? Like, obviously you feel better, but you might be a better friend, a better family member, a better whatever it is. Wherever you show up, you're going to be better because you're feeling physically and mentally healthier.
I'm with you 100%. That's exactly what I believe as well.
Yeah.
And on the other side, if you're not feeling healthy, it's like the example when you're really tired and you stub your toe.
Yeah.
It hurts way more. And you get frustrated and you yell and like sometimes you get emotional. Like there's the two aspects. Like to be healthy, you're more motivated, more compassionate, like you said, empathetic. When you're unhealthy on the other side, you tend to get angrier, frustrated more easily.
Yeah.
So it does have a huge impact on society. So
Yeah.
I'm with you.
And also, I think part of it too, it's like it's hard to fill other people's cups if your glass is empty.
Right.
So I think like being the best version of yourself, like you're saying, it has a huge impact not only on your life, but also like if you want to help people or help society or be like a productive member of your community, one of the best ways you can do that is to become the best version of yourself. Because it's like if I think a lot of people they tend like generally human beings are good. I think a lot of people they want to be able to help people or like have purpose in their life or in their work through like being able to like help people, like create opportunities for people or lift people up. But like how are you gonna do that if you're not
You gotta
like
help yourself.
you gotta help yourself and you
first
gotta
in a lot
be
of cases.
in a position to do that. And I think one of the best ways to put yourself in a position to do that, something that I've realized, it's you gotta be sort of selfish in a way for your health. Like you gotta be in the position to be able to do that. Like you
Yeah.
can't fill other people's glasses up if your glass is empty. And this is something that I've realized like the hard way.
Yeah.
It's that like if like I had this like I like helping people, but I had to do a lot of work on myself first. And like I'm still working on myself, still growing every day, still learning and all this. And like that's where I'm like starting to get in a position where to create opportunities for people. And I think it's health and the wellness that brings the health. That's what allows you to get there, to do these sorts of things, to live a purposeful life, like for the community or for your people, for your family. Like how are you going to help your family if you can't even help yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Like,
You know?
if you're coming from a place where you feel horrible, you just don't have the energy to give more out to the rest of the world. Like, for example, if let's say I'm physically sick, my stomach's really hurting, I might be in a worse mood. So when a friend comes over and they're asking for help, I'm a little bit more grumpy and I don't want to lend a hand. Or if it's not physically you're feeling a little less healthy, maybe it's mentally you're feeling a little more unwell. And that could be a massive list of things. You're feeling a little bit afraid, you're feeling a little bit insecure, anxious, depressed. All those things that are unwellness are going to drain your energy and make you less likely to want to give out to the world. So I think it's massive for yourself. Of course, like you want to feel good personally, you want to have more energy, you want to feel healthy, you want to feel good. That part to me is pretty obvious of like why an individual might want to feel healthy. But I think the domino effect and the potential for improving people's health could really be pretty crazy. Like if each individual person got 2% healthier mentally and physically, I think that could create a better society. So all in all, I think this is a big, important topic. And yeah, like I know Justin, you're pretty passionate about health and wellness, and you have a page that you've just started on Instagram, and I think a blog as well. What got you into the whole area of health and wellness?
Um, when I was a kid, I played a lot of sports, and I started off, I think it was like 12. I had like lower back pain. So I was out for 6 months, and it made a big difference in who I was as a kid, not being able to play soccer, basketball, track and field, all that.
Yeah.
But didn't really think much of it. You know, I was a kid. And through university, I was into lifting weights. And then after that, I got into the workforce. And I remember people telling me, this is a lie that everyone says that just bugs me. People say, like, I was in university, so I was working out consistently, eating clean. And then, you know, whether it's parents or other people in society, like, oh, wait till you get a job, you won't be able to keep those
Right,
habits
yeah.
up.
Right.
And it's like, why do we give that message to people? Like, oh, wait until this. And then it's like, oh, wait until you have kids, then you'll be unhealthy. Or like, oh, wait until this. Or
Right.
wait until you have more responsibilities. It's like, why isn't it like, no, like I
Yeah.
will prioritize my health and wellness, and then I'm going to do those other things, right? So I've just always been passionate about it, like personal development. I know you're into that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, like you've probably seen when you prioritize your health and wellness, even if you are busy at work, you're busy with whatever else, you're probably more effective at those things, right? Because
yeah, dude.
you'll be mentally sharper if you're taking care of your health, you're sleeping well, you're eating well, all that stuff, and maybe even more confident. I found that's a big one with going to the gym. Like you go to the gym, you just feel better, whether it's like the endorphin boost or whatever's happening biologically. You just show up as a better, more effective person. So yeah, I 100% agree with what you're saying, how it is strange that people will sometimes say, oh, well, I don't have time for that. Like they consider like the health and wellness practices like working out and other things a low priority. Like
Yeah.
if you have extra time, then you'll go do that. But it's not a main focus, which I think it should be. And maybe people just don't realize how much that'll spread into the rest of what they're doing, like beneficial effects.
Are you guys familiar with the compound effect?
Yes, yeah, somewhat,
So,
yeah, for investing and
so
stuff.
let's say, we'll give an example here. Someone makes one little habit change to become healthier or improve their wellness. Let's say every night after dinner, they go for a 10-minute walk. Okay, so instead of watching TV after dinner, they go for a 10-minute walk. You do that for a couple months. And then after that, let's say they feel inspired on their walk, so they start listening to a podcast. And then after a while, the walk turns into a 20-minute walk. Now they start listening to podcasts on how to improve their relationships, how to start a podcast, or how to do something else.
Right. Investing, whatever.
And then that one little habit of walking 10 minutes, in a couple years, now they can have their side hustle, or they can have a much better relationship, or they could be listening to podcasts about money and their finances are in place. So it's like, it does compound, like little changes. And I think like our society gets so focused in on like, you have to go crazy right away and do this big diet, or you have to exercise 6 days a week right off the bat. It's like, dude, walk 10 minutes a day.
Yeah.
Right.
See what happens after 2-3 months. Do
Yeah.
you feel better? Are you enjoying it?
Yeah.
Compound, keep building on that. That's all it has to be. It doesn't have to be this big crazy
Yeah.
thing.
I think that's a great message too, because a lot of people, maybe they haven't really started a lot of their health and wellness practices, and they look online and there's these people that are doing it all. They're like packing their schedule full of things. They're taking the cold showers, the saunas,
Yep.
they're like all these supplements and all these
Right,
things.
The ice
And
baths.
it's maybe a bit daunting for them, or like overwhelmed, like, oh geez, I don't know if I can do all that. But yeah, like you're saying, maybe you start small, and maybe that 10-minute walk that you do every day, that while you're on your walk, you start thinking about other things, and you decide you want to change, eat a better breakfast that day or whatever. It's like, yeah, these
Right.
things really do lead into everything else. And yeah, it's pretty massive thing.
And I think just starting with that 10-minute walk, it's a great place to start, because just that 10-minute walk, say you do that, like you go from not walking at all to doing a 10-minute walk every day or every 4 days. Like you do that for say a few months, you'll probably notice like a big change, like in your mood. You might lose weight. Because usually when you start exercising, I know for myself, when I started getting more serious into exercising, it's it sort of forces you, or not, I wouldn't say like forces you, but you feel like eating healthier because after you like exert energy, you feel like, for myself, like drinking more water throughout the day, like just to feel right, or eating
100%.
these healthy foods, like eating fruits, eating vegetables after a workout. Like for me, it's like mostly protein. But for people like first starting out, like say you start with 10 minutes and then you work to 20 minutes a day just walking.
Yeah.
I think in like a month, 2 months, 3 months, people notice like extraordinary changes just from that walking. And then on top of that, like you're talking about, there's the compound effects
Yeah.
of like it. Like that mood could help you increase your mood so you're like listening to podcasts about relationships or like family dynamics, and
Yeah.
like it just leads to it, just like that small little step can lead to so many doors opening. And I think like it's very underrated taking those small steps, because you go on Instagram and
Yeah.
you see like David Goggins or like
Yeah.
all these people like doing crazy workouts. Like some of those cool videos are super cool to see, and
Right.
it's a great thing to strive towards. But for people just starting off, like you're not going to see like as many videos of just people, doing like the first starting things like the walking, or
Yeah.
like
I think
just
you'd
like
be
basic
surprised by
push-ups.
like where these things could take you if you stick with them in time. You do those habits for a month, you'll see significant improvements. You do it for a whole year, you might reflect back and be like, wow, I'm like a transformed person in a lot of ways, like completely different. But yeah, Zach, I like what you're saying about the diet. Like after you're working out, you feel like you want to eat better. I totally get that, and I find like when I fall off the train a little bit and I stop working out, all of a sudden I'm eating like shit too. Like
Right.
it
McDonald's
just,
becomes a little bit more appealing, or like Popeye's chicken. It's like, why
It-
not?
yeah, it definitely is that compound effect, or just like it keeps the momentum going when you have one thing and then that leads to another thing, that leads to another thing, and you fall off the one first thing, and the next thing you know, everything else kind of seems to mess up. But that might just be for me personally. Like, do you guys find that like?
No, I want to speak to that actually. That's super important. It's like a cycle. So a lot of people try to just overhaul one aspect of their health, right? So they'll focus on like diet or exercise. Not even a lot of people focus on sleep. But here's the biggest one. If you don't have a good night's sleep, you're going to be more susceptible to skip a workout, to pick some. You don't have the self discipline or the
Yeah.
demeanor to eat something healthy or to even cook
The
something
energy.
healthy. You'll be more tired. You'll be less
Less willpower.
Sharp.
yeah, you
perhaps,
have less
yeah.
willpower.
Yeah, willpower.
So if you skip a workout, let's say you're a person that works out in the morning, you skip a workout, now you're not activating all the hormones so that later on at night your melatonin increases and whatnot. You skip your workout, you then have a shittier night's sleep the next day, and then you're gonna eat worse. So it's just a cycle.
Right.
Like everything works together, and we kind of like separate everything. But it's a power trio. Everything works way better together, and you don't have to do these big crazy things. And something that has worked for me is like I walk a lot lately. Like I have been feeling good, so I just walk instead of going for a workout.
Yeah.
But at least my blood is moving. My body is still like getting that exercise, right? So
Yeah, you're getting a lot when you go for a walk too. Just even being out in nature, getting some sunlight.
yeah,
Like
huge.
recently, I've been hearing a lot about how important it is to get sunlight from the Andrew Huberman Lab
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah,
he
he's
talks
made
a
his
lot
rounds.
about that there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I never thought about that before, about getting sunlight early in the day.
Yeah.
How important that is just for like your circadian rhythm and waking up, and even just getting sun on your skin, like that can boost testosterone and all sorts of things. But yeah, there's so many little intricacies that you can get into for health and wellness, and that boost you up. What do you guys think like the main like few pillars, let's say, would be? Like if let's say somebody hasn't been focusing too much on health, like if they were to jump in, what are the main ones that you guys think would be worthwhile to focus on?
I'll give you a couple I'll break it down to sleep, nutrition, and exercise. I think sleep, most important thing, people need to stop with their devices an hour before bed. And it's hard for people, but the best thing I can say is to find a habit to replace that time. So like for me, my mind's always racing, and I'm not good at meditating, but I know I need to calm my mind to sleep better. So an hour before bed, I light a candle and I stretch. you know. And sometimes, you know, if I'm tired, I'll just lie on the floor for like 20 minutes. But it allows us to, like, you guys have heard of the dopamine system pathway in our brains.
Yeah.
It also allows your mind to actually relax.
Right.
To like decompress
Yeah.
a little bit at the end of
Because
the day.
I'll go on a little tangent here. I was just talking about this. So a lot of people, and this is how I grew up, like when we say, oh, I'm so tired from work or school, I just need to relax. And what do? We turn the TV on or we go on social media.
Right.
Our body's relaxing, but our mind is not relaxing.
Right.
When we're
Right.
doing those activities, they're highly stimulating activities. So you actually start to feel even more worn out. So just like taking an hour to stretch, now your body's relaxing and your mind is relaxing because it's not getting stimulated. We're stimulated all the time, and then we go to bed and our mind's racing because we have been stimulating it.
It's
Right.
almost as if I feel sometimes it's like addicted to the stimulation.
We are,
Like it's
yeah.
hard to like to not to like the notifications, the checking the
Yeah.
email, like the Netflix, the this, the that. There's always something. And then when there's, say you don't have your phone for like an hour, 2 hours, or it's like a day with like nothing, it's almost like you're like for me it's like almost my brain's like
Yeah. Where is it?
it's like uncomfortable being bored. It feels uncomfortable, but it's like almost like we forgot about what that's like like as a society, just being
Yeah.
able to feel bored, sit with yourself. Just like being bored is okay, because I think like you're
great.
saying, it's one of the only ways your brain gets to decompress, to relax, so you're not like constantly just getting like influx of information
Yeah.
or like
I think it's hugely overlooked. Like we don't sit down and do nothing anymore.
right.
Like we
Yeah.
never just do nothing.
Just take in life sometimes.
Yeah.
Or like doesn't you don't have to be at like whatever Dominican Republic on a beautiful beach. You can just like sit out like whatever, there's like trees around or whatever, and just take it in.
Yeah.
Just like slow
You
down.
miss a lot with it, especially with the phones. I find even I'll be eating a meal and it feels weird to just be eating
Yeah.
and not being stimulated by anything else, which is such a weird thing. Like every time that happens, I always think like this is so strange that I can't
Right.
just eat and
Do you
not
find you, like-
be looking at my phone or anything. Or
Right.
like I can physically do it, but I feel like the urge to be like, oh, like let me just have a little bit more stimulation because I'm so used to it.
Right.
And you look around and everybody's doing that. Like
yeah.
people are walking down the street just all looking at their phone.
Yeah.
There's just that constant stimulation, and I think it is pretty critical to get those periods where you don't have the stimulation, because that's probably where you might have the most creative ideas or maybe some insights into your the way your mind is operating. But if you're just constantly consuming and getting stimulated, you might not have those periods. Like I've heard of a lot of artists saying being bored is good. Like you want to be bored because that's when you're going to start digging deep in your own mind, trying to come up with ideas to make yourself feel like, I don't know, stimulated. Just it can't be some external things. You got to think. And yeah, look around too, like you're saying, Zach. Like you might, I don't know, miss all sorts of stuff going on. You'll see people walking down the street with their phones out. There could be somebody getting like robbed or like some crazy thing happening and you don't see it, or some
Right.
animal appears, whatever. You're going to miss things. And then, yeah, like you're saying too, Justin, for sleeping, that's a big thing, is letting your mind have those natural cycles of stimulation and having it go down, especially for sleep, because if you don't let it go down, then you're going to have trouble sleeping, right?
Yeah. And so I'm a teacher and I teach grade 7-8 students.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest thing I see is they don't sleep well.
Mm-hmm.
So like you'll have a kid napping in class, or, you know, they're just exhausted. And it's like, I'm not going to force this student or this kid to try and listen to me. Like I can tell that they're not in the right headspace. And I
Yeah.
always ask
Right.
them, like, what do you do before bed? Oh, I don't know. I just like, I'm on my phone in bed. I'm like, okay. And I try and like educate them. People don't know these things. People know you shouldn't be on your phone before bed, but it's like one thing to tell someone, yeah, just don't go on your phone before bed. It's like, okay, well, what's the solution? What else do I do?
Right.
Or am I just gonna tell a 12-year-old to sit there
Yeah.
for an hour?
It is a bit of a recent thing too, because when I was younger, like younger in high school, I never knew like that would be affecting my sleep. Like those devices or our phones back in the day when they're sort of getting popular.
Yeah.
I actually didn't know about that. Like a
But-
lot of these things that we know today.
But
about-
when we started off with the phones, well, when I did anyways, all I had was text. And so like as soon as like I would say goodnight or like, you know, maybe I would get a ding here and there, but we
Right.
didn't have like smartphones, like computers in our hands.
right.
all
I'm
the
thinking
time.
more
Yeah.
like high school.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah, like yeah.
Yeah, I
But it
think
happened pretty quick, like that from the flip phone, the Motorola flip phone
To smartphone.
to smartphones.
Yeah,
I think that's definitely a part of the problem though, is that people might not even realize that that is an issue. They're just using their phone at night. They don't think twice about it. But then another part is that it's just difficult to stop.
it is.
Like if you were to ask people, would you want to be healthier? I'm sure like 100% of people would say, yeah, absolutely. And then there's the education part of, well, these are the things that'll help you be healthier. You want to do this so you'll get better sleep, the nutrition, the exercise, all sorts of things. But those things are often really difficult. Do you guys find that interesting, that it seems like a lot of what is going to make you healthier seems to come at a bit of a difficulty or a barrier? Like exercise a lot of time is harder, or like eating the healthier food sometimes feels worse. Going to bed at an earlier time, like all sorts of these things. Like it seems like there's a barrier. What do you think could like help people, maybe motivate them to do these more difficult things because it's going to be improve their health?
I think there's two things people need to remember. There's the pain of self-discipline, and there's the pain of regret.
Mm-hmm.
You get to choose
Right.
it.
Right.
We can't avoid pain in our lives. We're going to feel it at some point. Either you can go through the pain of this grueling workout for an hour, or you can go through the pain of regret in a year, 2 years, however long it is, when you're like, shit, maybe I
Yeah.
should have done those workouts.
Right.
So you get to choose. There's going to be pain in life no matter what. You can't avoid it. It's either the pain of discipline or the pain of regret.
especially when you're comfortable in your ways and it feels almost like a nuisance, like those little changes. Even for me, I'm finding like I'm trying to get into like diet and nutrition a bit, but I know it's like I'm gonna have to change my grocery list or like change my shopping habits. It almost feels like a nuisance. It's like, you know, like I know I gotta do it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like I know like if you don't do it, if you don't make that change, like there's gonna be the regret.
Absolutely.
Like
Right. It's like short term versus long term thinking. Like these things maybe in the short term, it's would feel better to get like the more pleasurable thing. If you have two options, you have to do like a grueling workout, or you can just like sit on your couch and eat chips. It's gonna be more pleasurable in the short term, but it's the taking the long term approach of I'd rather be healthier tomorrow, or I'd rather have a better
Right.
next year. And I think that's what a lot of it comes down to. And it's not entirely long term, because you're going to feel better after you work out pretty much instantly.
Yeah.
That's what I always try to remind myself too, is I know 100% of the time I will feel better after I finish this workout.
Yep.
It's basically like a guarantee. You always do. But it's like you still have to convince yourself every time. I find like for workouts especially, like do you guys find that where like even though you know it's a good thing to do, you know you're going to feel better afterwards,
Right.
but it's still like, oh God, I don't want to do this. Like it takes a lot to get you up, but once you get going, it's usually better.
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely had my days like that where it's like I've been sort of like building like slowly like the discipline to try to go like no matter what the weather is, like I'm going to the gym no matter what. But I have had days where it's like even though I have that mentality where it's like, you know, like you have a bunch of stuff to do with school or in this, and it's like yeah, I can go, it's gonna be tight, and it's like I don't really feel like going. But like when I usually do end up going, and it always feels so much better after, because I find it always sets my day up so much better when I do. Like I like to work out in the morning, and I find it makes a huge difference for like my overall day. My mood's better, and like a lot of these things. But also I really like what you're saying about like you get to choose your pain. It's like the pain of doing it or the pain of regret. And I think especially for like those bigger decisions in life, like say like a bit like outside of the health and wellness topic, like say you're thinking about like launching a business, or you have like an incredible idea for this or this, but it's like, oh, like I'm, you know, not sure, like it's a risk, like how will I look? I might look a bit foolish. I could lose my money. I could do this. like what are people gonna think about me?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like years go by and you don't like you have a really good idea. It's like you're passionate about something, but you don't dive into it. And it's like as time goes by, it becomes more like that inner voice. It gets more and more comfortable to sort of like to convince yourself that it's a risk, like, and it is a risk. But it's like I think being able to have that mindset where you're thinking it's like not about what will happen if I do this, but what if I don't do this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if I don't like
Yeah.
take that risk with that business? What if I don't like take that risk to like to talk to that girl? What if I don't do this or this or this?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what will your life look like in 10 years, 20 years from now? If you don't take those regrets that your heart's screaming at you to do, it's like, what if you don't do that?
For sure.
Like
Yeah.
that, like people should be like, I'm not going to tell how people should be, but like, I think like for myself, like understanding, like becoming more fearful of not doing the things that I know I should be doing, or
Right.
like my heart's telling me that I should be doing. It's like trying to develop that perspective to be more scared of that than doing the actual thing.
Well, here's what I think of that. I think it's easy now to be distracted. I think society is programmed in a way to distract us.
Right.
So we all know that, you know, if we exercise and eat well and sleep better, we have better outcomes. But the thing is, like we just said, we don't sit alone in silence. We don't have time to really reflect. So instead of feeling the pain of regret, oh, I'm not working out. Well, in 1 second, I can reach for my phone and forget about it.
Right.
Yeah.
I can be distracted
Entertained.
of my life whenever I want. Right? We could be doing something horrible. I can even be like a bad person and look to my phone and kind of forget what I just did, you know, make a horrible
Right.
decision.
Right.
So the distractions are everywhere and they're so available at all times. So that's why it's nice to reconnect with yourself, spend some time alone with yourself.
Yeah.
Like with a phone, you're not alone. Like, you
Yeah.
need to actually spend time alone. And then maybe that inner voice, then you're like, oh shit, like I actually haven't been on the right track. And that's why I'm a super big fan of journaling as well, because then you can see visually. I think it's like 60% of us are visual learners.
Yeah.
So when you journal, you could see, oh my goodness, I'm hitting my goals, or like, wow, I'm actually going off track.
Right.
But-
yeah, that is a really interesting point about how obviously fear is a big motivator, and it's not going away. In a lot of cases, that's a bigger motivator than thinking about the positives. And yeah, like you're saying, Justin, if we know fear is a motivator, and you're afraid of what your life's going to be like and what the outcomes are going to be if you don't take these actions, so you start to feel that fear. But because we live in a society full of distractions, you start to feel the fear. You don't like that, and you grab some sort of distraction.
You don't have to feel it.
You don't
like,
feel it. You don't feel it for long
almost.
enough. But the reality is that fear is going to be a net positive, because you feel that fear, and that's what's going to push you to go do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't go away though. It's always internalized.
Yes.
If you're distracted,
So here's the big thing. I just read a book by Robin Sharma, who's like amazing personal development person. And he says to embrace your feelings and feel your feelings. So a lot of people don't even know how to embrace their own feelings. They don't sit with their feelings, right? So what ends up happening over a certain amount of time, it becomes trauma. So then you see people that they can't stay in a relationship, or they are in a bad relationship and they can't get out of it. They haven't like learned to deal with their emotions. They just kind of internalize it, and it becomes like trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone, but it can become. So feeling your emotions is a huge factor.
Right.
like fully feeling them,
Yeah,
like
man.
to the depth that they're there.
Dude. And like
yeah,
even the
and
bad
accepting them.
emotions, like if you do something bad and you're ashamed, like embrace it. Feel ashamed, because I know like for myself, sometimes I feel like I learn lessons, but I forget them. Like, you know,
Right.
sometimes like, oh, let's say peanuts. Peanut butter doesn't sit well with me. But the amount of times that I've had peanut butter, like forgetting, like, oh, maybe just a little bit will be good. And then
Yeah.
the next day I'm like, shit, like peanut butter never does me any good.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like I
Right.
have short-term memory. But when we attach something to our emotions, we remember it way longer. So if you make a decision and you say something you regret, and you actually sit in and feel emotion, you feel shame. Now it's like hardwired in your brain, and you can start to change your outcomes, right?
Because
Right.
it'll have a greater impact on your actions. You're saying, like,
Because humans are emotional beings. So
Right.
we learn better through emotions. That's why storytelling is so important.
Right.
Like if someone tells you a story with a lesson in the story, you're more likely to remember it. We all know exactly what we need to do. We have parents that have told us, do this, do this, do this, act like this, do this. But oftentimes we don't follow it because it's not attached to an emotion. We learn things better when we live it. So then it creates like an emotional connection within our mind, and then we learn that lesson. Okay, that's why people tell me to do this.
Right.
Like, right?
I feel like, yeah, allowing yourself to feel any emotion is a pretty critical thing. Like, even if it is, yeah, you feel the anxiety, you feel the shame, whatever it is. I remember reading this book by Carl Rogers. He's like a psychologist. I think he died in like the 1980s. But one of his main messages was allow yourself to be what you are or who you are. And that was his main focus through the process of therapy when he would have like people come into his office or whatever. That was his goal, is allow this individual to accept themselves and be what they fully are. So when you feel an emotion of anxiety, you feel an emotion of shame, don't reject it.
Mm-hmm.
You got to sit with it and allow it to be there, because I think in pretty much any case where you either are rejecting or denying the way you're feeling, you add another layer of shame on top of that, right? Like, let's say you're feeling anxious and you're like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to accept that. At the end of the day, that is you. That the reality is you're feeling like that. And so you can either choose to accept that or not. And in accepting it, you kind of get relief, which is maybe counterintuitive. Is if you were to accept a thing that you don't want to have, it actually gets relieved. But yeah, that's another side of health and wellness for sure, is the mental health, which that can get a little bit more complicated, I find. Like, do you guys, when you're considering health and wellness, and let's say you set up two aspects of health and wellness, the mental health and the physical, do you find the physical is a little bit more straightforward and the mental maybe less so, or how do you guys see that?
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so what I think of wellness, I think wellness is mental health, physical health, spiritual health. It's like the total
Right.
being, right?
Right.
So like if we say wellness, it's kind of all like
All
Right,
encapsulating. It's almost
Right.
like the precursor. It's like the things that you do to attain like health, like good health. Wouldn't it be like the precursor? So like meditating, journaling, exercising,
Right.
eating right. These are all wellness activities. So if you want a good health, you need to like pursue a bunch of do different wellness activities, I think.
But we'd have to like be more specific with what type of health.
Right.
Because journaling won't give
Right.
you better physical health.
Right.
But I see
It's
what you
very
mean.
broad. It's a very broad like health.
I think wellness is like more of the umbrella term for like physical.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I think wellness is more of the total picture everywhere around.
Oh,
Includes
okay.
it all.
Yeah.
And then health, you can get more specific, like mental health, physical health,
Exactly.
emotional health.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because for me, I think of physical health, and it's a little bit more straightforward. You're gonna get your diet down. You're gonna get your exercise in, your sleep in. Mental health to me, and even actually, you brought up spiritual health. That is even probably more so, a little bit harder to, at least for me, to put down on paper. Like, what would you consider to be practices or let's say goals of spiritual health? If somebody was out there wanting to improve their spiritual health, how do you think you'd go about that?
That's a good question. I think it's about getting to know yourself. It kind of comes back full circle to what we've been saying about spending time alone. Like your spiritual self will be developed by actually spending time with yourself.
Right.
I just listened to Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey.
Oh yeah.
Very
I have that
spiritual
book
guy.
too.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
awesome. Great book, like super well spoken. And the times he's very spiritual, and the times that he's learned the most about himself and his spirituality, he was doing things alone, whether it was
Right.
like traveling or just being in the forest alone, doing things on his own. He learned about himself.
Yeah.
So spirituality is like, it's kind of a woo-woo term,
Right.
I find, but it's just, man, like, what are your core beliefs? Like, who are you as a person? What are your values?
Yeah.
And
I think
align
it
your life with
is
that.
definitely different for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But I like what you're saying about being alone, because how are you going to understand your own spirituality or grow spiritually if you're never alone or if you're being told what to think. Because I think the spiritual journey, it's a bit like it's a journey you got to take on like on your own.
Yeah.
And like for me, like having a relationship with God is like my like spiritual journey. And I think for a lot of people, like like I believe that it's important to have like sort of like it's something like a power greater than yourself. It doesn't necessarily have to be God, but even just like a group of people, like a community, your family, just like having this this concept or this understanding that there's powers greater than like yourself. Because like I find it helps give, like for myself, it helps give me that humility. And I think as like humans, like I think a lot of times, and I think science proves this a lot, like throughout the decades or throughout the time, it's like I think we're a lot like I'm not gonna say like I think sometimes we're smarter than we actually are. It's like we don't like we like at times it can seem like for smart people super obvious like the way things are, but I think life and the universe and everything, it's so complex, and that we'll never have all the answers,
Yeah.
and science will never have it figured out. And it's like I think like things are just so complicated that like for me myself, like I'll just share, like I'll admit I'll never know like what exactly is going on or what exactly is the right thing, but it's just like knowing that like there is something like greater than like myself. It's not
Right.
just like life
Yeah.
isn't about me. Like the way I see it, just life just is. And like I happen to be a part of life for a short period of time.
Yeah.
And I just like take advantage of that or appreciate that and try to
Yeah.
like make it a better world than when I came into it.
Right. And I feel like embracing and accepting that complexity, it feels like a spiritual thing you're doing. And like you're saying, Justin, it seems harder to put your finger on what exactly spiritual wellness is going to be. But when I feel the most like spiritually well, or like I feel like I'm thinking spiritually, and yeah, it sounds like kind of like a woo woo thing. Like, what are you guys talking about exactly? But
Right.
when I feel the most spiritual is when I'm out in nature and like you see everything going on, and you really realize how much is out of your control and how complex things are. And I feel the most spiritual when I feel the most humble, or like you feel the humility the most. Like let's say you're by the ocean and like there's like 6 foot waves like crashing down, and you realize like, wow, there's powers here that I don't know exactly how everything works, and it's extremely strong. Like that's when I feel like the most spiritually connected. And I feel like you feel the most spiritually healthy when maybe you let go of the control.
Right.
You realize like, okay, things are complicated. I'm not going to figure it out. I'm not going to know, but I'm going to just give up on that and accept that, well, we're here. I don't know entirely what's happening, but that's for me when I think I feel like the most spiritually well.
I want to try and point my finger on spirituality and being spiritually well, just to try and help people. So far, what the common thing is, you have to be humble. So you have to know that you can't control everything, that, you know, you're humble, you're ready to learn, you have an open mind.
Right.
But I think spirituality is about knowing kind of what you're, not knowing, but pursuing what your purpose is in life. Like for me, my spiritual journey, let's say, is finding, okay, is teaching what I want to do for the rest of my life. Is this how I'm going to serve? Is this how I'm going to help my community and leave the world a better place? What is inside of me? What's talking to me? Like, what are my dreams and aspirations?
Yeah.
Because if you follow your dreams and aspirations, you're going to give more to the world. And if everyone would do that, we'd live in a much better place, right? Like if everyone woke up in the morning and loved what they did, they were spiritually healthy. Because loving, like pursuing your dreams and your passions, it does help your mental health. But what it does is that it's like you're following your spiritual journey. You're doing what you're inside and you're meant to do. It's not your neurochemistry that's telling you that. It's
You're
just
following your
inside
heart.
your being. Yeah.
And for me, I find that heart that's screaming at you, like for me, the way I see it, that's God, like talking to you.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I view as God.
Yeah.
And it's like when your heart is screaming at you to do something, I think like that's what like you should be like pursuing, like your purpose, like your passion. And like for me, that's just my personal opinion. It's like for me, it's the heart telling you to do things, that's like God, or it's like God working through other people. Like when people are like doing good in life, I think like God works through people also,
Mm.
Yeah,
and like that's the
that
way
makes
I see
sense.
it.
Because like, yeah, we all have these ideas. We all have these things we feel compelled to go do. But where exactly do those come from? I guess we could say that is, like you're saying, God, or I've heard people call it like the muse,
Right.
whatever.
The universe, higher power, like
There's something that makes you drawn towards going to do certain things. Like I feel compelled to do this podcast, and like whatever other people feel compelled to do, it's coming from somewhere. I don't know exactly why I want to do this. There's maybe things on paper I could say, oh, it's better, it makes me a better communicator, it makes me this, that, or the other. It's an interesting curiosity, but there's other like deep motivations that I think we feel that are hard to explain other than it's just like some spiritual thing
right.
that's
Perfect.
pushing you. Yeah.
So we started off being like, I don't really know what spirituality is, and then through our conversation, we've kind of figured out spirituality comes from like knowing what you're meant to do or trying to figure it out and pursuing it. I think that will give you good spiritual health.
Right.
And
Right.
everyone likes different things. That's why I have a hard time when people tell young people in schools like, oh, you need to go to university and do this program, or like, man, there's a kid in my grade 8 class who's studying for like the LSATs. Like, dude, you don't even know what you want to do in life
Yeah.
yet, but this is
Right.
someone else telling you that that's what it is. But maybe in his heart that person just wants to be a musician, or like that's
Right.
why that spiritual journey for that child will be much more difficult, because there's societal pressures telling him what he should be thinking, and then he has to battle with everything.
I find it so hard for like younger people, and I went through this also myself. Like all that pressure of like, you need to do this, go to college, you need to go to university, you need to do this to get a job. And it's like all that pressure, especially at that young age from junior high school up until high school. And then, it's like you only have 1-2 years to figure out, or, like people are asking you, like family members and this, like, oh, what do you want to do? What are you going to do? And it's so hard. I think it's almost like, I'm not going to say impossible, but it's like almost impossible to know at that age like what your purpose is, or like what you truly want to do. Some people do know it, and they're like, oh, I want to be a firefighter. They know from 4 years old they want to be a firefighter, and they become a firefighter, and they're
Right.
happy. But it's like some people, it's much more difficult to discover that purpose.
I'm really going to lean in on one thing, man. I think it's super important. You finish high school, or you're in grade 11, 12. How much time have you spent alone finding yourself? Probably not much, right? You're always surrounded by friends. You're doing sports. You're doing all these things. You're surrounded by
Right.
family. So you get to grade 11, grade 12. How much thinking for yourself have you done? Probably
Right.
not much. You're probably, every time you make a decision, mom, dad, what should I do? What should I do? People are telling you. How much time have you spent alone? Like, I backpacked Southeast Asia for a couple months after university, and I met some people and I grew so much from that. I learned what I loved and what I was meant to do. But people that went right after high school and started backpacking, they were as mature as 30-year-olds that I was meeting. They were like 20 years old, 19 years old, and they said, you know what? I'm not going to go to school yet. I'm going to go and back solo travel. And then they actually learn what they like when you're somewhere else and you don't have everyone else's opinion, and your aunt and uncle aren't telling you to be an accountant. You're just alone
Yeah.
in a foreign world talking to different people from all around the world, and you can say, okay, I actually like this, without everyone else's input.
Yeah, you're way
So-
more likely to tap into that deep voice, like we're saying. Like
Yeah,
it
man.
is it's a deep voice and it's very quiet. But if you have a lot of people in your ear, like you're saying, Zach, in high school, you have maybe your parents and whoever else saying like, do this, do this, do this, and then also living in a very distracted society, it's unlikely you're gonna hear that deep, quiet voice unless you're off on your own and you take that time to really think, how do I actually feel? What actually motivates me? Where do I want to go? And yeah, you might never hear that voice if you're just constantly externally stimulated.
It's almost as if you never fully grow into yourself as a person, like up until then, unless you do have that period of time where you're able to be alone and figure out what you want to do on your own, without the distractions, without the recommendations, and without the societal pressures telling you what you should be doing and what you need to be doing. And I think like also like going into this education subject, I think it's a good topic, because I think like things are shifting so quickly in like the university or the college industries. And I think for a lot of kids like coming up, I don't think they see the same value as it was like a university degree or college degree or like getting those pieces of paper as it was like 10, 20 years ago. And I think the shift is already happening where people like investing all that money into getting a degree. And I think 30% of people that get university degrees don't even work in the field that they were studying it. And how many percentage of people that got university degrees and can't even find a job once like they first get out, or how many people that go to like 1 to 2 year technical schools and make like double what the people that studying for 4 years for around like at the same amount of like the same subject. So I think this entire like the education industry, I think there's a big shift happening, and I think a lot of like the younger people, and I'm noticing it like right today, I think it's going to be very different for them.
Yeah.
And I think it's good in a way, because I think like the university sort of like at the end of the day, it's a business, and I think it's indebting a lot of people, and it's not giving the same value as it was. Obviously for like engineering, doctor, lawyer, it's great. But I don't know, I think a lot of people are starting to rethink the value of these things. So
what do you guys think about if you had a class, and maybe Justin, you're closer to the source here because you teach grade 7 and 8, right? But like a class that's like focused on more like personal development and like personal psychology, like thinking about what do you even want to go do? Because it is so difficult to know. And then the education system is really flawed, where you end up going down a path. You think this 4-year degree is going to promise you this, that, and the other. You're going to make all sorts of money, but you don't really know what you're doing. But yeah, I feel like it could be decent to have maybe a class that's almost just purely, you have your English, you have your math, then you have one class that's just
like a guide, to guide you through that transition process, or like to discover a purposeful life, or
This
like
is exactly where I am going. This year I want to start a personal development club.
Okay, nice.
First of its kind.
Yeah.
And it's the first of its kind that I've heard of, and I think it's time, because what I keep telling my students is you are by far the smartest generation so far. You have smartphones. Never has a 12-year-old been able to educate an adult on how a TV works, or how to, like, they have these very specific skills now, and very specific knowledge bases. So they're very intelligent. Most of my students already go to the gym. They already talk about mental health. They're 12, 13 years old. They do all these things. So maybe in the past, when we were growing up, personal development club, probably not a lot of people would go. Like, we don't have a smartphone in our hands. We're not struggling like the kids are now. The kids are struggling because they're getting flooded with information, but yet they're starving for wisdom. Right? There's so much information, but who do you believe? So to have an adult in front of them, and someone that's like, I'm not going to tell you what to do or what to believe. I'm just going to show you what helped me. How can you think about these things? So like I want to start a personal development club.
Right.
And it makes me a little nervous, because a lot of the things that we're talking about here is like the education system is flawed in certain ways. I'm in it. And I'm also going to educate the kids as to why, through this club, hopefully to show them like, okay, this is not your only avenue, and this, you kind of need to do these things if you want to really figure out what you're meant to do.
Right. So, what would so when you start the club, what kind of activities would you have them do? Like journaling, or like, I don't know, what would be the basics, you think?
So let's say every Monday it's like an hour session. Half an hour I'm gonna show or kind of teach a subject. So let's say the first one is decision making. Why is decision making so important? Well, if you want to be successful in society, you have to make decisions. If you can't make a decision, the company will hire someone else to make the decisions for you.
Right.
So being a decision maker is something, as a kid, like, I didn't know, and I've just learned recently, like, I wasn't a good decision maker because I was so analytical, and I asked everyone's opinion before making a decision. Like, before choosing my career, I didn't go within. I went, okay, let me ask like hundreds of people what I should do.
And you get analysis paralysis almost.
Yeah. So instead, it's like, okay, even like 1 week on decision making and the power of decision making. And then you have them write down something. Journaling is great. That kind of after every session would be a task that they would have to do to consolidate their learning, right? Because we don't just learn from passively. We learn when we're actively engaged.
Right.
So journaling, even asking people questions. Okay, if you're considering this, go ask people. Like ask people, what are 3 things that make you happy? What are 3 things that you regret the most? What are 3 things you would recommend to yourself 20 years ago? These are things that really create better conversation, and we learn through conversation. As we all know, we're doing a podcast.
Yeah.
So I think like these kids are ready. They're ready at a way younger age. We can't compare them to who we were at 12, 13 years old.
Right.
They would benefit. I really believe they would benefit greatly from starting those conversations at a younger age so that they can have the tools and the knowledge. Like personal development can be a class on its own. Everyone should learn about personal development, right? That's what I believe. Like, so why not start showing them, wow, there's a world here. And even if one kid takes the program for the whole year and all that kid gets is like, oh, Mr. Bourgeois showed me Ed Milet or this one podcast on personal development, and they listen to that once a month for the next 5 years, compound effect. Now maybe they actually understand personal development. They didn't listen to a word I said, which is fine,
Right.
but I put them in touch with someone that they really relate to in the personal development field that they may have never found in this world with constant distractions.
Right.
For sure, yeah. And yeah, the kids these days, and I mean everybody is overwhelmed with the amount of content. There's so many channels, and like you're saying, the information's there. There's plenty of information, but the wisdom maybe is harder to find because you got to filter through, and for adults it's difficult to know like what's the right content to be consuming, and for kids it could be even more difficult of knowing, is this person right? There might be some people giving you advice online, but it's really hard to know. And I think that'd be super cool to have a personal development class, and like even just to open up the conversation of, it's fair to not know what you want to do at all, but it's going to take some exploring and some digging, and that's fine. Like there maybe because you're doing that class, these kids will feel less pressured or less ashamed when it comes to picking what they want to do in life, and they don't know what they want to do. Because I think that was a big thing. A lot of people will be like, fuck, what's wrong with me? I don't know what I want to do. But if you have a class like that and you open the conversation and people start talking, well, you maybe try this, maybe try that. And yeah, like we had happen right here. We started talking about spirituality, and like within 10, 15 minutes, we were able to put our finger on it a little bit better of like what that is exactly. So that'd be cool. Yeah. You have like journaling going on in that class maybe, and then just open discussions. And
exactly. Yeah. Through the discussions, you just kind of open up the topic, give them something to think about, just like what we've done. And they can relate because they're all the same age and they're all going through the same things. And now they have better quality conversations.
Right. I think it's great too, because I found like for myself, some of the best lessons that I've learned in life, it's been through like life experience. It hasn't been lessons that I've learned through education or in books or in discovering these sorts of things. It's through like making mistakes and like developing purpose and like understanding life. So that's why I think like having a personal development class, I think could benefit like it could benefit people so much, because like having that foundation of knowing like how do you discover your purpose, like how, like me as a kid, I would never know how to do that. Or it's like, how do you deal with like the financial system today to like to get ahead? Or it's like, how do you grow, or how do you develop a mindset where it's like, yeah, bad things can happen. You can like, you can lose your job, or you can fail the test. You can do all these things, but it's not a big deal because you understand that, or you have the tools to have the mindset where it's not a big deal. You, instead of having a fixed mindset where you're chasing after the good grades, or you need to get the good job, you need to get this, it's like having that growth mindset. And it's like for kids growing up, for myself back in the day, it's like, how would we how would we have known that? Like if there wasn't like a personal growth class, if there wasn't, it's like, these are things that I wish that I would have had.
Same.
And especially like that transition from high school to university, I think that transition is a bit underrated, how big of a transition it is. Because it's not just like you're going from school to university, but I think you're also transitioning, like you're becoming a legit adult. You're going from like a bit like young adult to adult, and it's like a big change for a lot of people, and I think it's underrated how big of a like transition it is, and how it affects everyone differently. And for some people, like they really struggle through that transition. But
Mm-hmm.
it's like having those tools. I think having like a personal development class, or having, like, for you have the experience, you know what to do, you know the mindset, you have the purpose, and like you've gone through that, so you have the experience, you know, like what mistakes were made, or you know people that have made mistakes,
Right.
and like you're doing the learning. So being able to siphon off that knowledge, that wisdom, to like the kids at your school, I think it could have, like, that's a more
It's
valuable education than you're probably getting in a lot of these classes, like especially if you're studying biology and you're not even going into biology.
mm-hmm.
And a lot of, so I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page here, because a lot of parents might say, well, hey, that's what I do. Like, as a parent, that's what I do. I teach my kids these things. But I really empathize for the parents nowadays, because, like, let's say 20, 30 years ago, you had one person go to work, and oftentimes one salary could, raise a family. And so the other person got to help with the kids, help with the cooking, cleaning, so then both parents at night could like help raise the kids.
Right.
Now, people are barely scraping by, two jobs, their kids come back. So imagine this, both people work from 9 to 5. You get home at what, 5:30, 6? You have to make dinner. You got to bring your kids to soccer practice. So
Right.
do you really have time to and the energy? And it's not just the kids that are distracted on their phones, it's everyone, it's society
Yeah.
as a whole. People are burnt out.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe when we grew up, we had more of these like opportunities and these talks where we're just sitting
Yeah.
there like with our friends, bored, and like, cool, let's talk about this. But there's none of that happening anymore, even between parents and kids and kids. It's hard for people, man. Like, our economy, our society is just pushing us to always be busy and working.
Time is very scarce nowadays.
Yeah.
Well, because it's an attention, it's like the market's being built on attention. So I think, like you're saying, it's having the time to be bored, to have those moments where you could have those productive discussions. They're not there anymore. It's like a scarce resource.
A lot of these things too are relatively new, like focusing on your mental health, or like putting a big focus on journaling, or all sorts of the things that our favorite like neuroscientists Andrew Huberman talks about like getting your sunlight and all these things. The older generation might not have had as much of a handle on that as you might. So even if, yeah, there's the factor that they're very busy, but also some of these things are newer, and they might not have had them at when like kids these days, their parents were in school, maybe they didn't have the same information that we have. But yeah, I think having a personal development class to focus on basics is massive, because we might assume that people know all these things about how to get better sleep and how to have better mental well-being. Maybe even like you touch on like personal finance. There's these categories of things that are just gonna, you just need to know them for your life. They're not maybe the specific things that you go down and that you work in. Like, you're not gonna work in these areas maybe, but everybody needs to know how to live their life better. And yeah, I think that'd be huge just for kids, but even for everybody, because yeah, we weren't taught it in school, so you maybe live the rest of your life and you never know these things.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, let's say like there's people out there that they really like practical things. They want to know like, hey, give me the cheat sheet here. Like, I want to improve my health and wellness.
I'm a bit like that sometimes when I listen to the podcasts and they start getting pretty technical.
Yeah.
I'm a bit like, all right, but like, what do I need to do to, like, when you hear them talking about like the science behind like the sleep, or it's like this neuron acts with this.
Yeah.
And it's like, for myself, I find sometimes like with like lack of time or too much whatever, it's just like, I like knowing like, all right, well, but what do I need to do
Yeah.
sometimes? Or it's like, because I find some of the science gets a bit too technical for
Yeah.
me when it talks about like the health and wellness, like the technical aspect of it.
Right.
Well, like,
Let's see if we could break it down. I'd say like we can stick with those pillars that you mentioned. There's the physical, there's the mental, and then there's the spiritual. If we're talking physical health and somebody's out there listening, well, yeah, I want to improve my physical health. What do you think some good things that they could do to improve their health would be?
Okay. So instead of giving them like a broad answer here, we're all individuals and we all have very different lifestyles. So I'm just going to name off. So the first thing to do, let's attack nutrition. So a lot of people tend to go towards like, oh, if I want to be healthier, I have to start adding things. I have to take these supplements and doing things.
right.
Most of the value from nutrition actually comes from taking things away. Taking the bad stuff away is much more valuable than adding extra little good things. That's like the next step. I think health is in like levels, right? So like, yeah, you could eat junk food all day and take a bunch of vitamins. Are you really healthier than someone that just doesn't eat the junk food? No. So step one, okay? Step one would be in terms of nutrition, make a list of foods that you know aren't healthy, but you eat them anyways. And then choose one that you're like, I eat this, but like, it's not my favorite. Maybe you really love cheesecake and every Friday you have cheesecake, but then you have Oreos on Sunday. But you just eat the Oreos. You love the cheesecake, but the Oreos you can do without. Okay, choose that. That is no longer a thing now. So you've eliminated one thing. Just like we said with exercise, it's small steps. So, and then after a couple months, you're like, okay, maybe I'll choose something else and stop doing that. So here, there's levels. So if you cook with seed oils, like highly
Canola oil, vegetable oil.
yeah, take that out.
I didn't know about that
Olive
until
oil.
recently.
Olive oil is like, I've read a lot of books on health and a lot of them don't agree with each other.
Yeah.
Like the science is so new all the time and it depends what you're specifically focusing on, whether it's gut health, losing weight, living longer. Everyone's going to give you different advice.
Right.
But olive oil, all in all, everyone agrees, extremely healthy.
Okay.
So
So,
I
it's not even unhealthy olive oil.
No. It's
Okay.
Olive oil is one of the few things that can cross the blood-brain barrier. So it actually goes in your mind and it helps your brain.
Okay.
So olive oil, very, very healthy. 2 to 3 tablespoons a day. So I drink not drink, but like I put olive oil on everything now and I love it.
Put it in your
Just chugging
water.
the olive
Yeah,
oil
You
bottle.
got like a water bottle with like a bit of
Yeah.
olive oil on top.
But man, like on chicken, you know, sometimes chicken's a little dry if you're like
Yeah.
eating just chicken.
Right.
I just put olive
douse
oil
it
on it,
in
man.
olive
Oh,
oil.
that's
Yeah.
smart.
But make
Yeah.
sure you choose your olive oil in a dark container.
So not from Costco?
I get mine from Costco.
Right.
Yeah, it's like organic and it comes in a dark bottle because if it's in a light bottle, light can get through it and it changes some of the compounds, right?
Oh, okay.
interesting.
And it's the same thing if you like take your olive oil bottle and just leave it open. Some people put a spout in it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's always oxidizing. So you want to make
right.
sure you put the cap back on it. It's in a dark bottle and that way your olive oil is not losing its benefits.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been losing all kinds of benefits on my olive oil.
Yeah.
I got that light
Keep it
bottle,
outside.
spout open.
Yeah.
Fuck. But yeah, it is funny how like in the nutrition industry, there's so many conflicting ideas. You'll have two different doctors and they'll say, oh, it's good to have a high fat diet. Then the next guys say, oh no fat. You got to have a lot of carbs. From what I've been listening to, and my sense is that biodiversity is a real thing where certain people function better on a higher fat diet, certain people function better on a higher carb diet. If I was to give like any practical advice for improving your nutrition, it would just be cut out processed sugar as much as you can, because to me that's the one thing that there's really no benefit at all to having it. Like there's like salty foods, for example, some people might look down on them, but you need salt at the end of the day. Like you're gonna have some serious issues if you go with no salt for a few days. But if you go without processed sugar for a few days, you might feel better than you ever have before. Like there's really no benefit to it.
Processed sugar, is that like the
Like the refined, like white sugar. Like if you're
syrup.
eating fruit and you have sugar in that, I think that's fine. Obviously, like fruits have a lot
so
more.
that white powder, that's processed sugar. That
Yeah.
white
Yeah.
And like any sugar you'll find in
Brown
like a soft
sugar?
drink, anything.
brown sugar isn't better than white sugar?
No.
I don't think so.
It's marketed better though.
Same garbage.
Yeah.
A better marketing team behind it.
Yeah, exactly. They have a better PR team on the brown
Yeah,
sugar.
better PR.
But it's crazy how literally it's sugar. It's like the worst thing you can put in your body and we're like, oh, but it's brown sugar. It's not that bad. It's
yeah,
like, dude,
it's natural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, didn't
Yeah.
say natural.
It's
like,
that cane
they'll
sugar.
say that.
It's like if you're talking about a hard drug, like, oh, but this drug's a little bit better though
Right.
than that one.
But it's like, yeah.
That's come on, dude. Like they're both bad for you, obviously. but
Right.
Yeah.
We're sold these different
Right.
lies.
It's still the
Yeah, or-
same chemical composition.
Or like even honey, like that's basically the same thing, but people be like, oh, honey's good shit.
Right.
I mean, maybe it has like,
Well,
I don't
for
know,
a
some
sore
weird thing-
throat.
Oh yeah, it
Or,
fucks
like,
up a sore
you're
throat for
sick.
sure. Yeah, honey's good, maybe good for that.
Yeah.
At least like that's the like old like wives' tale or whatever, right? Like ginger ale and honey or like.
Oh,
good when
yeah,
you're
that's
sick,
what
but
I
it's like
see.
ginger ale is just full of sugar.
Yeah, ginger ale's
There's
not
no
Yeah.
ginger in it, I don't think.
No.
It's all
So-
like,
But
Yeah.
here's the thing, even with honey, depending who you talk to, some people are going to say honey's super healthy for you. But it depends what they're researching. What are they looking into? If you're looking at the effects on your blood sugar levels, honey is not good. It does the same thing to your insulin response that sugar would in terms of
Yeah.
insulin alone, right?
okay.
So if you look at from that aspect, it's not healthy, but it does have antioxidants and other things. So people are having a hard time to figure out what's true because I can point out anything, any food, and say, oh, this has vitamin E, vitamin A, so it's healthy. But okay, just because it has a couple vitamins or like nutritional value doesn't mean it's healthy, right? And it doesn't. It depends what you want to look into. There's gut health. So some foods are horrible for gut health, but people say they're healthy for other things. There's longevity. Some food, like if you eat a lot of meat super healthy if you get like organic, grass-fed, good quality meat. But
yeah, get on that elk.
yeah,
Yeah,
I had
Joe
elk steak
Rogan
2
elk.
days ago. Yeah.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, love it. It's actually not that expensive either, man. I'm a huge fan.
Really?
Yeah.
What was that? Does that taste like deer or was it
It's
taste
gamey,
like?
yeah.
Okay.
I like gamey like meat, but
Really?
yeah,
Some Montreal steak spice on there or
not even.
not even?
No, just salt
Don't
and
even
pepper.
need it.
nice.
I'm
Just
pretty
raw,
hardcore.
yeah.
Montreal steak spice has some sketchy things in it.
Okay.
I still have it sometimes,
Yeah.
but it's not just pure
That-
spices.
Oh,
That
right.
is something
The
I find
sugar.
interesting about how you could get elk, and it's like a grass-fed elk, and the nutrients in that elk steak is going to be so much more than that random cow steak that you're buying at Food Basics. And I've heard a similar thing is happening with like depending on where your fruit are growing, the like the soil in some farm has been depleted.
No way.
And so that an orange maybe 1,000 years ago that was growing on that soil where it hadn't been farmed over and over and over would have like 200% more nutrients than an orange that's now growing on that soil where year after year after year we're trying to hammer out as many oranges out of that soil as possible. So they're just not as many nutrients, but on the surface you see, oh, two oranges looks the exact same. You maybe see that elk steak
Right.
and then you see another steak and you're like, oh, it looks the same, probably the same deal, but yeah, you'd be surprised.
Dude, okay, this is extremely important, and it goes into how there's so many food sensitivities nowadays, right? And one of the big ones that's super controversial is gluten. And so like I avoid gluten. I've had a lot of digestive issues, which is why I've read so many books, because I'm trying to fix myself basically. So there's gluten, and then people will say like, oh, it's our ancestors used to eat gluten and they were fine. Okay, or like gluten's been getting eaten for thousands of years. In the Roman Empire, they ate wheat and shit like that. Okay, but here's the thing. Back then, it was not the same wheat or whatever as it is now. It's a completely different thing. Now, it's highly processed, first of all, which back then they would eat it more closer to its natural state. It's getting pumped with herbicides, pesticides, fertilizers. The soils have no nutrients in them.
Oh,
so
really?
now you're eating like a wilted, old, not so nutrient dense thing, and that's why people are starting to have food allergies, because it's not the same food that it used to be.
Oh, really?
Right? So our microbiome doesn't recognize this. People need to like remember that our bodies and our cells and our genetics are thousands of years old, right? So like our diet in the past 10-15 years has changed so rapidly, and there's so many people with digestive issues now, me being one of them, because we're giving our body these new foods that it has never seen before. We haven't evolved to eat what we're eating now.
With like the preservatives or like the antibiotic fed like meats.
Our body is not like made to digest that stuff
And
yet.
some of those fruits, you see the size of them, like the oranges, they're like
Holy shit,
huge,
yeah.
and they're all the same. They're perfect, like perfectly made.
Yeah.
And it's you wonder, like, what do they need to put into it to make them
Yeah.
all look perfect?
Some of the
like-
foods these days was like, if you were to give people 2,000 years ago them, they'd look at them like it's like an alien thing. Like if you were to
Yeah.
hand somebody a Twinkie back in like like year 200, they'd be like, "What the fuck is
like
this?
a
Is food?"
Jurassic Park
Yeah.
orange or something like
It's just
that.
processed to such a crazy degree that it's completely transformed. It's not really food anymore. It's just some weird thing that never rots and never like it just lasts forever. It's actually crazy. And then
Some
you
of
put
the-
that in your body, and then of course it's gonna have weird effects and maybe fuck up your digestive system.
Yeah, the science has moved so fast and is so ahead of human biology that like literally they're making foods with chemical compounds that they know we will get addicted to. Like the people that make Twinkies and Kit Kat bars and all that, they're not just like, oh,
Right.
let's make a nice bar for people. No, they're like, okay,
Yeah.
they're like,
Yeah.
what's highly addicting? Okay, let's do that. What's gonna make people think that they can continue to eat more? So like Cheetos, amazing concept here because Cheetos melts in your mouth, right? So your brain,
Right.
when something melts in your mouth, your brain is like, oh, there's not a lot of calories in here. So then you can keep eating more.
Oh,
So
yeah.
their food is not only like, oh, just buy our product once, nice and innocent. It's like, no, we're gonna make you addicted to it. We're gonna make you want more, and we're gonna
Yeah.
make you think that you're never full, so you can eat as much of our stuff as possible.
Literally evil scientists out there just working for
I mean, they
Cheetos.
don't see it that
Yeah,
way,
yeah.
and it's not their
Yeah.
fault. But like,
Yeah.
it's like the people that started social media, right? They didn't do it in a bad way, but
No.
it's just what
Yeah,
happens
Mark.
is now we're
Yeah, Mark's actually a good lad. Actually, the more you listen to him, he's decent. Mark
Yeah.
Zuckerberg. But yeah, it is crazy that there's the top tier scientists are working on trying to figure out how can we make these things as addicting as possible to get more people to buy our products. But yeah, they're not thinking, oh, let's just make a great bar for people. It's let's just make something that they're gonna buy more and more and more and more of. And when money's the main focus, next thing you know, you have all sorts of people that are getting more unhealthy, more obese, more digestive issues, more like sensitivities and allergies to certain things. Like I've
More-
heard people will go to Italy and they'll eat the pasta and pizza there, and I guess it's grown better, and maybe when they're eating in Canada they have gluten intolerance and they can't really eat a lot of bread, but then they go to Italy and they seem fine.
yeah.
So there's something about the way they're processing it or the fertilizers or whatever
Yeah.
they're doing that makes it a different product. Even though it looks the same, it's bread or that's pizza dough and that's pizza dough, but it's the
Like when you read
minor details.
the back of the packaging, it's like, what are a lot of these chemicals they put into the products? It's like, what are these? It's like all these things that like it seems normal because it's like every packaging. It's like whether you're getting mayo or like frozen foods or this, there's all these chemicals, and it's like, what do these actually do? It's like, what are these chemicals? It's like there's zero transparency about what are we actually eating. A lot of these, like all those what's it called, like all those processed foods. I think processed foods is probably the worst culprit. It's like,
Yeah.
what, like literally, like what are these chemicals they're putting into? And it's very strange. Like I don't know.
So basically, guys, if you want to improve your health, go closer towards food in its natural state as you can. So like the example with pasta in
In Italy. Yeah.
Okay, well, that pasta has been handmade. Our
Right.
pasta here that we get has been heated, it's been added with a bunch of things. It's way further away from its natural state than it is in Italy. So the pasta in Italy is healthier. So if you can, whatever foods you're eating, try and go a little bit closer to its natural form if you can. Right?
Yeah.
If you really like chocolate and you're eating caramel, maybe you start getting 75% dark chocolate. You're getting closer and closer to it.
Okay.
And then you get maybe 90%. And then maybe you get
Yeah.
cocoa nibs, which is literally just the cocoa
100%.
plant. Right?
Yeah.
So any area you're in, you can just think of this. Go closer to the food that's in nature.
What about like all natural milk chocolate? That's still not natural.
Well, it's
like-
got a lot of processed sugar.
The marketing is
natural.
next level.
They got you, bro.
Yeah, they got
Yeah.
me pretty good on that one.
Yeah, their PR team's killer there.
Yeah.
Dude, okay, so I went to Zach's house like last week,
Yeah.
and he's asking me some stuff or whatever, we're chatting, and he's like, what about this veggie thing? Like, I drink this veggie juice every morning. I'm like, okay, nice. Like, I'm expecting he has like,
It was a green smoothie.
yeah.
like-
And
it's
I'm like,
green.
yeah, green smoothie. I'm like, okay. He's probably drinking like athletic greens or like the veggie greens, something healthy green.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's literally a box that says veggie smoothie, I look at the ingredients. It's like it's just sugar and like
It's like concentrated juice.
Yeah.
I think it's like Oasis, one of those green, but
Oh,
it
okay.
said like chlorella spirulina added, like added vitamin.
Sounds decent. Yeah.
And it said smoothie, green smoothie. And it
Yeah.
has the kale on it.
Oh, okay,
So
that'll
it's
sell
like
ya.
I
Yeah.
thought, okay, there's just kale in here, it should be good. Like,
yeah, no,
like,
the
kale's
ingredients.
a superfood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the ingredients told a different story on that one.
Because when juices are made, like when it says from concentrate, it's not really juice. Isn't it just water and powder? Or like
Possibly, I'm not
Probably.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah, from concentrate, it's a bunch. They add a bunch of other shit in there. But yeah, it is sneaky how like you'll have a like a company. They'll be like kale superfood juice, but then in the ingredients there's maybe not even any kale,
yeah,
Yeah.
and then
It's
it's,
like
just
kale
like
flavoring, like natural kale flavor.
yeah, they'll say like natural flavor or whatever that means.
Yeah.
Because remember, I asked him, like, I grabbed the bottle and I went to like show it, like, so, like, do you think this is healthy? As soon as he saw it, he's like, no, like,
as soon as I
that's-
saw the bottle, it's like a
Didn't even-
typical,
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
sugary juice. I'm
Yeah.
like, no, dude.
I'm like,
Yeah.
you didn't even read the ingredients, and you got to read it, even worse.
Yeah.
Like, you knew right away, probably because it said Oasis or something like that. Or,
yeah.
Mm,
If you're getting like a juice, like you'd want to get something that's like freshly pressed. Like you would tell by the bottle that like the people care about the product, or it's like a local thing, or
Right.
it's
Apple
you know,
cider. Would
Ap-
apple cider be like healthy juice?
I think it's the same situation.
They
You
have
make it
farms
a-
on the stickers sometimes
a
too.
farm.
Yeah. So it's like comes from a farm probably.
Yeah.
Probably not though.
Dude, marketing
No.
works so well on
I
you.
know.
It's insane.
I'm very visual, so it's like, oh,
Yeah.
see kale, it's
Yeah,
okay, we're
visual
good to go. They
Yeah.
could put picture of kale on a chocolate bar, I'd be like, okay, this is good.
As long as there's a farm there, you'll
Yeah,
get
yeah.
right up.
Yeah, mom and pop shop or whatever.
Yeah, fuck. I mean, probably not. It's probably the same thing.
Bro,
Just
okay.
a bunch of sugar.
Right.
Especially apple cider. I think that's like, yeah, it's just a sweet drink.
Yeah,
Maybe like a bit of vitamin C
they're
or
pretty
something. I
good
don't know.
though.
But yeah, I mean, for sure, that's like physical health, nutrition. Okay, we've kind of established that. Avoid the processed stuff. Try to get the whole foods. Maybe don't eat a lot of sugar. What else physically? Like, I guess we can dive into exercise. What would you guys say? Like some quick practical tips for people if they want to improve their physical health in terms of exercise.
I'd say even walking, like
Yeah,
just to,
start
like
small.
even if you're in good shape, like walking is one of the easiest and one of the best forms of exercise. I think like especially for losing weight. I think they've been doing studies. I think walking is actually better to lose weight like in the long run rather than doing like intense running or like high impact these sorts of things. Because when you're doing so say you're going like a 10K run like every day, you become like calorie deficient. So when you do a 10K run, if I did a 10K run, like I would be like gasping for food after.
Yeah, soon
Because like
enough.
all that energy, because I'm not like a marathon runner like
Yeah.
I used to be. So if I did that, so like I think there's this common misconception of like what's the best way to get healthy or like to get in the best shape for exercise. And I'm like the way I was thinking about it, it sort of shifted with all these new studies and scientists and research. I think like all these high impact things where you think like, oh, the running, the marathons, like the cycling, that's how you get in the best shape. But I think they're showing that strength training is one of the best ways to increase your longevity. So strength training along with your VO2 max. So obviously cardiovascular health is important. But so they're saying strength training, VO2 max, and those sorts of things. It's one of the best ways to increase your longevity because part of the reasoning behind it is what it does. It increases your bone density. So typically, like say you're like running or like high impact sports, like the way your bones are set out, if you want to add muscle to them, you're not going to get nearly the amount of like muscle building capacity or like pressure on your bones themselves because you're not getting the same sort of frictions from say you're doing a bench, a squat, because that's having a lot more pressure on your bone structure. So when you're
Yeah.
doing these sorts of exercises like the heavy lifting, the strength training, the squats, especially if you're doing high intensity interval training throughout, Like that's the best way to build that bone density. And there's
Yeah,
studies coming out.
I've heard that's one of the best like measures for longevity in people is what their bone density and their grip strength at old age is.
Right.
Like yeah, cardiovascular health. That's obviously really critical and may reduce your likelihood of getting a heart attack or having all sorts of other ailments. But yeah, as you get older in age, what gets people a lot of the time is they fall over and they break their hip or
I was
something.
just
So
gonna
it's
say,
like,
yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
you definitely want to build up that bone density
And
and
balance, especially at an
yeah,
older age, like balancing ankle strength, like knee mobility. It's a lot of those
yeah,
like little
mobility's big.
mobility
Yeah,
things for your older. But getting back to your original question, like what's one of the best ways you can get into like to exercising or trying to get into it?
just start basic.
Like
Like
just start. But I think like what's a bit underrated, it's like not just like going to the gym, but if there's something that you enjoy doing, like playing frisbee, like joining
Mm.
sports or like doing these sorts of things, like activities where your body's moving and
yeah,
you're
yeah,
having fun and
yeah.
you're getting around with
You have a
people, or
community.
it's like a community organized thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
like just get your body moving. It doesn't have to be like the whatever dead squats or like this thing or like Turkish get ups and all these things. Like just get your body moving. And it's
Yeah,
like just getting your body moving, like walking, these
yeah.
being out in nature in the sun,
I
10-20 minutes a day will make a huge impact over the long term.
Yeah, there's so many options really. I think at the end of the day, yeah, it's just do some sort of exercise, and each person's gonna have their preference of what they like to do. Like for me personally, these days I really like running, and I find running is really beneficial for the getting away from distractions for a little bit of a period of time as well. A lot of time when I run, I don't even use music, and some people be like, "That's
Nice.
crazy! Like,
Right.
what's wrong with you?" But I do that because it's a period of time where, and it's a rare period of time where I have no stimulus. I don't have any music. Like whenever I'm driving, I usually have music. I'm listening to a podcast, and then whenever I'm home, I'm often watching things. But when I'm running, it's just a nice time where I don't really have much stimulus, and I can just think about things and just running is the only thing I have to really focus on.
Do you
Just
find it's meditative a bit for
yeah,
you sometimes?
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really meditative and it's also I know all the benefits that can come from cardiovascular or like aerobic exercise. So there's like the de-stressing, like anti-anxiety, like all sorts of legitimate benefits, like biological effects that's gonna happen on you.
Hmm.
But then there's the more like spiritual things, like if there's something that's been bothering you during the day, you go out for a run, you have that period of time to just kind of decompress. And if I go out for a run for an hour, I have an hour to kind of process that thing. And for me, I find that really beneficial. I used to really like strength training, like was big in like bench, squat, deadlift, trying to just like get up the numbers. But
Right.
I prefer like focusing a little bit more on cardio where you run up the stairs or whatever and you don't feel out of breath and you just I don't know I like focusing on the cardio, but again I think it's just do some sort of exercise. It's a good thing. What about you, Justin? Like what's your preferred way of
So
exercising?
I think it's a little bit dangerous to let people just do what they want, because this is the journey I went on, and I see a lot of young people do this, especially boys or young men. Is we start thinking of exercise, the first thing we do is we think like, how do I look better? So then we start to
Hmm.
watch videos of like bro splits and like, okay, you
Right.
need to work out your biceps and your chest and your shoulders, and that's what's
Yeah.
gonna make you look good.
Right.
But what happens is posture. To me, the number one thing is like do things that'll help your posture. So whether that's like walking, running,
Yeah.
external rotation, mobility work, functional training. I'll talk about that in a second. But like people tend to just, okay, let's work out, and then they'll go on TikTok and they'll see these workouts. But after a couple years of not really knowing the anatomy of your body and functional movement, of doing those movements, and then after that, what do? You work at your computer, internal rotation when your joints are internally twisted, right? You're internally rotated here.
Right.
Then you're benching, then you're doing curls. Everything's in front of you and everything's getting tight and tight and tight.
Oh yeah.
So like have kind of an addiction to this, because I'm like passionate about posture and like being able to move and move freely. So when I see people with bad posture, I like kind of look at it's weird, but I'm like, okay, what's tight on this person? Or like, ooh, this person probably focuses a little bit too much on the front delt, because you can tell that like the arms pinching down, or like this person doesn't do any back, or this person doesn't stretch, or this person,
no legs, so they're like.
So I would say, if you want to get into training, search up functional training. And that works perfectly with longevity as well.
Yeah.
So like longevity, a lot of like tests that Peter Attia does, longevity expert that Zach and you guys know about.
Yeah.
He'll test for grip strength. He'll test for like getting up from a chair, seated position, not using your hands. Can you get up from a seated position? Can you sit down? Can you go from sitting or from lying on the floor to standing? Those are all functional movements that we take for granted. But like, man, we see it. Like even people in their 30s that get up, even us sometimes, we get up and it's like, oh,
super stiff.
What kind of functionality is that if like it's like and then you have to try and get up out of your chair?
Yeah.
So like functional strength, and the second biggest thing is momentum. If you want to get in shape, or if you want to improve, you have to start like Ollie's saying, and then build momentum. So for me, and I think we can all attest to this, once we lose the momentum, it becomes way harder. After a couple weeks of letting go, then it's harder. A visual that I like to tell people is like, okay, picture you have this big boulder, okay? And your big boulder, when this reaches the final destination being your health goals, you've succeeded. So let's say you do this. This boulder is perfectly round, okay? And I start pushing the boulder a little bit. I put a lot of energy and I push it 2 feet. And then I stop. And then 2 days later, I try and push it. And then I stop. Okay? I'm doing that, while Ollie, on the other hand, Ollie goes like this. And every day, Ollie just gives it a little push. But the next day, he comes back, and that boulder's still kind of rolling, because he has that momentum. So the boulder is the momentum. We give ourselves way too much resistance. When you start something, stop. You start this diet, you start this exercise program, then you stop. Then you start and you stop. That's the hardest part. Once you start moving the boulder, just keep doing it. That's why right now I'm just walking. Like the past 2 weeks, I haven't been feeling good. I've just been walking. I don't want to lose all my momentum. Because then I have to start pushing the boulder again.
Okay.
So I'm just giving the boulder little taps right now. I'm like, okay, I know you're not making big progress, but at least you're not at a dead stop.
Right.
That's my 2 cents.
And I think people would be surprised by how far they can get that boulder if they just every day push a little bit. Because at the beginning, you might feel overwhelmed by where your goal is and where the boulder currently is, and be like, holy shit, that's fucking kilometers away. But you'd be surprised. And I found, like, even reminding myself that whenever I have any goal, I find that motivating. Just telling myself, you'd be surprised. Like, just do this every day, see what happens. Where you end up in a year could be, like, very surprising to you. So I mean, just you got to start it and just keep going, keep chipping away at it. So I think that's big for physical health, is just get the exercise going. Another thing I wanted to say, actually, just to go back to the nutrition aspect, is I feel like a lot of your results are going to happen in the grocery store. Just don't buy the bad things. At least for me,
Right.
if I have cookies and I have other stuff at my house, I'm gonna eat them. And if I just win the battle at the grocery store and I don't pick out all sorts of like processed sugary foods, then I can't eat them because I just don't have them at my house.
How do you go about winning that battle at the grocery store every time you go? Every week.
I don't know. I guess I've gotten in somewhat of a habit now where I'm pretty used to just getting the same things. Like I'll basically just get meat and vegetables, and that works pretty well for me. But I do find when I have like some like chocolate or some like cookies or whatever at my house, I will eat it. Like the other day, I got a gift. My brother's girlfriend gave me some chocolate. She was just in the UK, and so it's these chocolates that are like the soldiers. With like the hats and like the whatever, I don't know what you call them exactly, but those guards, it's chocolate shaped like that.
Oh, okay, like the mini army men, stick
exactly, yeah. So
Okay.
so I had those, and I usually don't buy chocolate when I'm at the grocery store, but here's a gift. So now I have these
Right.
chocolates right there, and I'm the type of personality like I just like if it's there, I'll eat it, and I'll eat like all of it. So I ended up eating like both of these chocolate army guys, and then I felt like shit, and I'm like, oh fuck. But it's if I didn't have it, I wouldn't eat it. And I know that for me personally, I've learned that where I have a tough time regulating the quantity. So like if I have something that I really enjoy, I have a tough time just being like, okay, I'm gonna have a bite of the chocolate today, and then I'll like maybe have a bite next week, or like
Right.
it's just like you take a bite and you're like, oh, I end up finishing the whole thing.
Especially when you
So
don't eat it a lot and then you like eat that super sweet food, it's like it tastes, it's almost like it's easy to just finish it all right away, I find.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
there's human biology versus willpower, and
Mm.
human biology always wins. So like when we eat those sweet things, we're all the same. Like we always eat way more than we should,
Right.
but because our willpower is no match for human biology, where our body thinks that, oh my goodness, here's some like high sugar things.
Yeah.
When our body gets sugar, basically it's just thinking like, this is a lot of energy here. This is a jackpot. So like keep eating this
Right.
stuff. This is jackpot. We get to store this, and then we'll be good for a while.
And it's an overwhelming level of sugar in comparison to what we used to find. Like
Yeah.
we obviously, like our DNA has been built because you find sugar in some berries or some fruit back in the day, and it's like, yeah, we hit the jackpot. This is actually good because fruit is really good for you. But nowadays you eat chocolate and you're getting a similar stimulus of like, oh, we hit the jackpot. But
Probably
the
get a
reality
dopamine
is,
rush probably.
yeah,
Like-
but the reality is that this food's been warped so much by those evil scientists that we're talking about. So it's no
Right.
longer actually good for you. It's just like it's got that sugar. It's triggering the same pathways that we've evolved for, like we've evolved to have for thousands of years, but it's actually just gonna harm you. So it's a bit of a trick there, like they putting all the processed sugar and everything.
I went grocery shopping after the gym the other day, and I find like after the gym, if I go shopping, I'm like I was like super hungry, so I hadn't eaten anything. So I find that was probably the worst time for me to go shopping because I ended up buying like a few sweets. I got some
was
brownies
just
and
gonna
stuff.
say, my
got the-
two
Like,
big
'cause I was so hungry. Usually I don't buy sweets, but it was weird. Like right after the gym, I went
Yeah.
grocery shopping, and I ended up like I left with like some brownies. I forget what else. There was like a couple other sweet things I don't usually get.
Yeah. that's
Yeah.
so
And it's
true.
like now that I think about it, it was definitely like I was hungry.
Really hungry, yeah.
And it's like, oh,
And they had a
it's-
farm on the pack, so you're like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's probably good for
Yeah,
you.
they had a kale on it actually. There's a
Yeah.
kale on it.
Some kale
Yeah.
brownies.
They said it was green and natural, so I figure why not?
Boom.
That's all you need
If
to
it's
know.
natural, well then it's you
There's
Yeah.
a
know,
cow
Take-
on the
take
bottom.
my
It's like,
money.
this is from Canadian farmers.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Canadian farmers, so
Oh,
it's
that's
not American.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fuck. You do not want American farmers. No.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think those are good points for the nutrition and exercise, which are the big things for physical health. Sleep, I mean, 8 hours is always good. Because to me, when I think physical health, those are the three kind
Yeah.
of pillars, right? So sleep, like we were saying earlier, try to put the lights away and the stimulation away before you go to bed. Try to get your 8 hours. One thing for me, like waking up, I try to again stay away from the stimulus. So it's not necessarily the sleep, but it's you've just woken up. I like to like put my phone away and then eat breakfast, and it's like a more of a gradual ramp up, like kind of like how we were saying, you want to kind of ramp down into the sleep. I find it beneficial for me to gradually ramp back up.
Nice.
And if you just right off the start, you start by watching TikTok, it kind of just like, I don't know, fucks with your head a little bit.
Yeah.
You guys find that? Like if you, like, do you put the phone away or like not look at your phone immediately in the morning or?
Yeah, man. If I start looking at the phone in the morning, I just tend to do that throughout the day.
Yeah.
Right? Like the more you
Mm.
wake up, like this, let's say you're at a cottage or whatever, you wake up and you don't look at your phone. Odds are you're not like programming your mind that day to continuously look.
You won't check it as much that day,
Yeah.
probably too.
Yeah, the first hour's huge.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's like the momentum thing we're talking about. It's like the you have the long-term momentum of you every day you push that boulder a little bit further, but there's like mini boulder pushing things within the long-term thing. That you wake up and how are you going to start this off? Are you going to start it off by looking at your phone and then next thing you know, your whole day is sucked into the phone because you started it off like that? Or are you going to start it off, you're going to wake up, you're going to go for a walk, you're going to think about what you want to do for the rest of the day, and that might lead to a way more productive and enjoyable day. So
Mhm.
it's like starting it off on one path or the other.
Well,
And yeah.
sorry.
if we want to tie that back to like our primal brain and like scientifically how that makes sense is like the dopamine system, it wants to seek out pleasure, right? So if the first thing in the morning that you do is you go on your phone and that's a pleasurable activity, for the rest of the day, that pathway is going to be telling you, okay, dude, there's pleasure here on this device. You should use it. If you do something different and you go to the gym and you know, after you work out, you feel good about yourself. Well, now your body and your mind and that system is saying like, okay, there's pleasure here. There's pleasure in doing these things.
And more reward also.
Yeah. So you ever notice like you won't clean the house or your room for months, and then once you start, you know, once you start, sometimes you start cleaning, and like next thing you know, you're kind of addicted. You're like, holy shit, I'm like cleaning, sweeping everything. I'm
Right, you
dusting
can't
stuff.
stop. It's like
Our brains just want to give us pleasure.
sometimes I'll do that. I'll go to clean one thing, and then before you know it, I'm like,
You're
like
cleaning
30 minutes in,
Yeah.
like got a deep clean, like everything, and it's
even-
like it doesn't
yeah.
feel like
It's not even your house anymore. You're just cleaning
yeah,
other shit. You're just
like knocking the neighbor's
your
door, like
neighbor-
you need
I
any
can't
help
stop.
with anything,
Yeah.
or
Yeah, it all comes back to
just
the same
sweeping the
pathway.
streets.
really
You start cleaning something. That's why the momentum is huge. You start cleaning something, and then you realize like, oh my goodness, I feel better that I did that. And then your brain's like, dude, keep doing this. It's making you feel good.
It's the same boulder,
Yeah, it's the same boulder, just in a different
Holy.
aspect. Yeah, it's all we operate on like the same systems,
right?
right? There are, I think, like 7 neurotransmitters. We
Okay.
operate like there's like serotonin, adrenaline, all those different things. But
Norepinephrine or
yeah, norepinephrine. Yeah,
Norepinephrine, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, that's a new one. There's 8
However
now.
you say it.
There's
yeah,
8?
yeah. Well, that's the new one.
oh
there.
yeah. Zach makes them up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's top level scientist right here.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. But that definitely is a big thing where I feel like people just aren't as motivated to pursue other things, and maybe not as motivated to dive into their deep motivations because their motivation system's drained because they're getting their pleasures instantly on their phone, and then next thing you know, you like I remember hearing Andrew Huberman talk about how this is a rare time where we don't have to work for our pleasures. Like hundreds of years ago, there'd always be effort before the pleasure.
To be
typically,
entertained also.
to be entertained,
You have to work to do
any sort of like if you wanted some sugary food, you have to go find it.
Yeah.
If you want anything, there's always effort that comes before the pleasure. But nowadays, it's just pleasure. Snap your finger. You like order Uber Eats, whatever it is, and now people, they don't have as much of a reason to put in the effort because you just get the pleasure easily. If like the reward and the pleasure is what we're seeking, it's just become too easy that you just get it easily, and then you get addicted, and you don't have that motivation to go out and do the more challenging things. But yeah, I mean, I want to get into the mental and spiritual health, like the practical tips. I think that's pretty good for physical health, like a lot of what we talked about, the nutrition, the exercise, the sleep. Now if people are wanting some more practical tips for mental health, what do you guys think? Like, I know, Justin, you're a pretty big advocate of journaling. Like, what do you find you get out of journaling? What are some benefits that you can find in that?
Journaling I would use as like as much of a spiritual thing than like a mental health thing, but journaling is where you have those conversations with yourself. To me, journaling is like where I learn about myself, what I want, so that I'm more aligned with my purpose.
Right.
That's like, to me, that's what journaling is in a nutshell. And
Yeah.
it can help you sleep better if you like, people journal for different reasons. So like some people just like stream of consciousness journal, which is just like before bed, if your brain's all over the place, just start writing stuff down. And for some people, getting it out of their heads on paper allows them to relax and sleep. I'm more of like the way I journal, I just ask myself a question and I answer it. So like if I'm not feeling too happy, I'll say, what makes me happy? Why am I feeling unhappy? Like if you ask yourself those questions after a couple weeks or months, like you're going to realize, okay, this is actually not making me happy, or this is what's stressing me out. Sometimes we have this big jumbled mess and we don't realize, like, okay, like Stacy at work is the one that's stressing me out.
Yeah, no.
And, you
fuck
know,
Stacey.
like Stacy's
Yeah.
like, I got to ask to move seats, and then, oh my goodness, and now all these different things like happen and get better, or like, oh, I'm really seeking validation from this person, or I'm scared of what this one person thinks. So journaling allows you to like figure that out. So I think that's
Yeah.
what's good for your mental health.
Yeah, I totally see that for like any of the times that I have journaled. It does feel like that, where you have this jumbled mess in your head. At work, you're really frustrated or annoyed with Stacy, like she was really like bothering you all day, but you don't know exactly why. And then you start to write about it, like, oh, okay, she made that comment, and you're just sitting with yourself trying to write, and you're like, okay, I think that comment really bothered me because it like poked on this insecurity, and then you start unraveling that. Why am I insecure about that? Why am I insecure about this? Next thing you know, you're like relieving some of your mental health issues just by really unraveling it. But it's hard to think about it all in your head and really map it all out. I've heard that the way we think, we do ourselves favors a lot of time by jumping over certain words. And so when you write things out, you can't skip words if you want it to be a coherent sentence. So in my mind, I might just be thinking Stacy annoying, like you're not
Right. It
really...
makes sense in your head. Like it feels like it makes sense in your head, but they're not fully formulated sentences.
Yeah.
So it's not fully formulated thoughts.
And especially if it's a huge topic, like let's say that comment Stacy made ends up diving into like a few different insecurities, and maybe this could be 5-10 pages of writing. That's a difficult task to process all that in your head without putting it in order and structuring it all. But yeah, you end up kind of figuring it out. And I've also heard from some psychologists, like I know Jordan Peterson has said that it's basically like a supplement to therapy. It's like your own personal therapy is journaling, because I think that's what happens a lot of the time in therapy, is that they'll ask a question and you have to think about it, and they're like basically like pulling on certain things. And when you can do that on your own in a lot of ways, like you just you write something and then like maybe you circle something and be like, why is that the case? And then next thing you know, you're slowly like unmapping the way you think and figuring out yourself. So
it's almost like a third person view of like a roadmap within your mind. So like you're saying, that's what the therapists are doing, or the psychotherapists, asking those questions to figure out, okay, what's really happening. But when you're journaling and you're asking yourself the question, it's almost like you're getting a glimpse into like the roadmap within your mind. So it's like, if you really want to understand why you feel a certain way, or like these sorts of things. And like for me, like I've actually started journaling also, like not super long ago, but I found like it's made a bit of a difference. But I also find it cool like having that roadmap, so I'm able to go back in time and to see like the changes being made like throughout like the months or whatever.
That part's really,
it's like
really
you have a history a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's not like you just have that one day. It's like you have a history and you're able to see growth, or like whatever, like
that's how
happening.
Matthew McConaughey wrote a lot of that Green Lights book.
I know. He calls it diaries.
What's it called?
Green Lights.
Green Lights.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay.
He apparently been journaling from a really young age. I forget what it was. Like, I don't know, like 10 years old or something.
Really?
And to write this book, he pulled out all his old papers, and he had so many. And yeah, I think that just helps you understand who you used to be, where you're at now, and can be motivating, because let's say you reflect back on what you wrote 2 years ago, and maybe you're writing about how you were struggling with something, and now you've kind of overcome it. It just proves to yourself, oh wow, look, I can actually make progress. Because sometimes it's difficult to believe that you can make progress, but if you keep track of it, it's easier to have concrete evidence. Well, look at that, I actually did improve from that. So journaling I think is huge.
So like when some people, let's say someone's still unsure about journaling, they're like, I don't know, it doesn't seem like it's going to help me out too much. I have a question. What is 725 divided by 5?
Zach, you're the math guy here. Yeah.
48.
So it's pretty hard.
Not even close.
It's pretty hard to do in your head, right?
Yeah.
Life is way more complicated than that one math problem, right? So we're trying to solve life in our heads.
Yeah.
What if I gave you a pencil and a paper and I said, can you solve this? 745 divided by 5.
Right. It only take me like 2 or 3 minutes now.
But you could solve it, yeah.
Yeah.
Even might take me a couple hours.
Yeah.
But I'd be able to solve it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like we think we get a little too confident thinking like we can solve the complex issues of life in our head. It's like, whoa, man. Like we can't even do 5 times 15 in our heads. We need a pencil and a paper. So
it's the same thing with goal setting. I find like if I'll set I used to set goals in my mind, like I want to do this, like this or this or this.
Yeah.
But like when you set goals in your mind, I find like you're not even really setting goals. Like unless you write them down, it's like writing down your goals helps so much more for actually going after and achieving goals. Because when you set out, even if you think it's an actual goal set in your mind, it's almost like it's just a thought.
Dude, yeah.
Like it's literally just a thought. Even like you feel like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna do this. Like within a month, I'm gonna have this done. But you only think in your head. I don't think you have the same amount of likelihood to actually accomplish that. That if you had written it down,
You're
and
onto
you're-
something, man. It's been scientifically proven. Putting it from in your head, where it's kind of still imaginary, onto a piece of paper, puts it in the real world. It makes it
Right.
real. So it's like
concrete.
it's a real thing.
Like-
Now your goal is on a piece of paper, so it's into the real world.
Right.
They actually did a study with Harvard students. There's mindset mentor. He always like talks about this study, but I think it was Harvard in like 2010. Don't quote me on this, but they tracked Harvard students that wrote down their goals and journaled, and those that didn't. The ones that did, so were 90% more successful than all the people that didn't. So by just tracking your goals and setting goals, odds are you're going to be more successful.
90%.
Yeah. And dude, it makes so much sense because what we talked about is we get distracted. If every day you're writing your goals, every day you're getting closer to them because they're always in your mind. If you forget about your goals for a couple years, maybe you're just in life, you're in a job and you're always
Yeah.
busy, you kind of get distracted.
It's in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's like even if you set out a goal and then you watch like a 3-hour Netflix movie, are you still thinking about your goal after, or are you still like, you're probably not as aware of it? It's
Yeah,
like-
it just like it ingrains it a little bit more in your mind because you've thought about it.
yeah.
There's another level if you've written it down. Maybe another level is you said it to somebody else, and now you just you spoken it, you've written it, you thought
Right.
about it. That goal is just more concrete because you have layers of where that goal is, and I think that's pretty good. And I do want to touch on the. So, do you guys have any other like mental health improvements? If not, we can kind of jump into the spiritual, and then the time's getting close to our deadline here, so we'll get start wrapping it up. But what do you guys think?
I just
Mental
want to, one more last thing for mental health is like don't overlook all the physical health aspects when it comes to mental health.
Yeah,
If you want
Yeah.
your mental health to be good, you should prioritize like sleep, nutrition, and exercise.
Yeah.
for sure.
So
Yeah, that is a big point, honestly. Like for my mental health, I found exercising one of the biggest things. You always feel mentally way better after you exercise. So maybe you're making gains, like you're building muscle, and that's what you first set out to do when you wanted to exercise. But you realize that the improvements to your mental health are almost even more. Like
Right.
especially with aerobic exercise, the mental health benefits are insane. I've heard somebody put it like, if you could get all the benefits of exercise into a
A
pill
pill?
form, it'd be the most popular
Oh,
drug in
yeah.
the world.
Yeah.
Just because it's like it'll reduce your stress, anxiety, depression,
It'll
all
give
sorts of things. So
Yeah.
it's there's an insane list of benefits, and a lot of them are mental. I think that's a really good point of just don't forget about these things. Maybe on the surface look like physical health things, sleeping, exercise, nutrition, but they all dive into mental health. And I mean, at the end of the day, like your perceived health is a mental thing. So you're going to be physically exercising to improve your how you feel is a mental thing. So
Right.
it all almost plays back into they all tie together.
Yeah.
It's they're mental, physical. You're not just the brain, you're not just the body. It's all kind of one thing.
Yeah, I'd
And-
actually like to tack onto that. I find like exercise and physical fitness is one of the greatest foundations if you want to have good spiritual health or good mental health. One of the best ways to achieve that simply is through exercise. I think
Oh yeah.
like you're saying, like on your mood,
For
like
sure.
for me, like having I find exercise is like one of the best things I can do for my mental health.
Yeah.
But it's not only that, it's if you want to start taking your spiritual health more seriously, or like these sorts of things, I find like being in good shape, feeling good is one of the best ways to have a good foundation to pursue these things. If you want to improve spiritual health or mental health, it's
Yeah.
through physical health. It's one of the best things you can do. And I think that exercise, it's almost like 4 times, I'm not sure the exact number, but compared to antidepressants and anti-anxiety pills.
Yeah.
And it's like 3 or 4 times more effective than those pills alone. And the thing about those pills is they're not long-term solutions.
Right.
Exercise and living a fit life, it's a long-term solution.
Yeah.
And it's a lifestyle that will benefit your mental health greatly. And maybe for people who aren't like as spiritual, you might be able to feel good enough to develop that spiritual aspect, or to grow people who are already spiritual. If you want to connect more with your higher power, your spirituality through journaling, whatever it is for people, like being in good shape is one of the best ways you can maintain that.
Yeah, I think that to me, like you're saying about how exercise can be equal or better to some anti-anxiety or depression medication. That's amazing, especially because obviously medication is likely to have some side effects that aren't positive. But if you look at exercise and you look at it as an equivalent thing, what are the side effects? The side effects might be all positive, right? So it's like you're solving one thing, and instead of having negative side effects, you have purely positive. But I do want to say too, like obviously, we're not doctors, so there'll be cases where it's not a purely equal comparison of, oh, you can hop off your medication and just exercise.
Yeah,
But it's like,
for sure.
but I have heard those studies though, where in a lot of cases it is equal or better. So it's a natural remedy that has so many other side effects that are positive. And then you also mentioned, sir, I just wanted to, you were talking about the spiritual benefits that come out of exercise. And that made me think about how when I'm really pushing myself during exercise, it does feel like a spiritual development in a way. Like I'm thinking about earlier this year, I did a half marathon, and was such a grind for me, especially I was like 2 hours in, my calves are cramping up, and it's just like, you got to dig through this. And it felt like one of those spiritual things where you have to like let go of your ego, or like you almost like detach a little bit from, I feel like I want to stop. I don't know. It's hard to explain exactly, but I that made me think of like when you're really pushing yourself in exercise, it does kind of feel like a spiritual thing.
That level of resilience that you have to have, it's almost like you need to go outside yourself to get that energy or that last push to be able to do that. And that could be different for everyone, but I think that has to do with like resilience. And for you, you're saying it's almost like a spiritual out of body. Like it's that much of a challenge. It's like your body's telling you can't do it, you got to quit, but you're able to overcome your core,
that. Kind of. It's like
it's
like how far can
it's
you
like
go?
Primal, almost like it challenges your soul a little bit. You're saying,
yeah, for sure, yeah. And yeah, sir, just what were you gonna say there?
Oh, I was just gonna say, so how you're saying exercise has all positive effect, like the side effects are positive. Something that's super interesting and very promising is sauna use. So sauna use mimics exercise in a lot of ways, because what exercise does essentially is like it circulates your blood, right? Your heart rate goes up, blood circulates better. There's other things, but they did a study on people that use the sauna for 15 minutes a day, 5 days a week, older people, and they saw a 66 and a 67% reduction in dementia and Alzheimer's.
Damn, that's huge.
Just from the sauna. So exercise has those same benefits, right?
Yeah.
We know that. But just from a sauna, which mimics a lot of the benefits of exercise.
Activates the heat proteins.
Heat shock proteins, yeah.
Right.
So like you can't really get that in a pill form. You can't get 66% reduction in dementia.
Right.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Physical adversity, you can't put that in a pill. Like
Yeah.
environment, like harsh cold environments, harsh heat.
Yeah.
Super hard things to do. It's like you're never gonna get those in pill forms.
Have you guys heard of hormesis? Do you know the concept hormesis?
No.
So when it comes to building resiliency or like living longer, I heard about hormesis through Dr. David St. Clair. Essentially, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So if you do something hard, you're gonna get stronger. Hormesis applies to anything in life. Plants are one of the healthiest things we can eat, right? Right? Plants are healthy for you, vegetables and everything.
Right.
But plants do not want to be eaten by us. So when we eat plants, they actually have compounds in them that are like not that good. okay, there's a
It's
bunch of vitamins, but they're
like
kind of trying to
slightly
fight
toxic
back
or something.
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
So they're so good for us because it puts our body in a state of hormesis where it has to battle it, so it gets
Right.
stronger.
Oh.
This is why excuse me, this is why fasting is super important to live longer, because you're adding a stress on your body. What is exercise? It's that extra stress, sauna. So hormesis is the foundation of like making your body stronger, your body, your mind, your spiritual health, like
Right.
yeah, going through things that are difficult.
Yeah, I think that's a good mental switch too, to start looking at stress as not purely negative. Like if you're stressing, you have this minor stress on your digestive system when you're eating vegetables, but it turns out it's a net positive. You have a stress on yourself when you're in the sauna. You have a stress on yourself when you're in a cold plunge. When you're exercising, it's a stress. And so these stressors grow you and end up being net positives. And I also know that there's benefits to like the mentality you have going into situations. So if you're looking at exercise or any other stress as this is something that's going to grow me, just looking at it from that perspective will give you better results than if you're looking at, oh no, stressor is a negative thing. So
Right.
I mean, that's kind of like the placebo effect. It's like how you're thinking about the situation, and the mind's crazy powerful in that way of just perspective, and you'll get a better outcome from the way you look at it. The raw situation might be the exact same, but the way you're looking at it, it'll shift the outcome. So
Right.
yeah, I think that's all good stuff, guys. I mean, this has been a good podcast. Thank you, Justin, Zach.
Yeah, man.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much for having us on. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a blast.
Have a great time, man.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, and yeah, stay healthy out there. Take care, everybody.